Hello and welcome to our webinar, Know Your Customer, where we'll be looking at a no-code solution that we built with Nintex. I shall pass you over to Ian Woodgate.
Good afternoon, everyone. So before we start, I'd just like to introduce the speakers for today. My name is Ian Woodgate. I'm the Managing Director here at Point Beyond, and I shall be talking through a few slides. And I'm joined by my colleague Andrew Webster, who will be walking through the demo of the solution that we built.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So we do have quite a lot of demos today, and Andrew will be spending some time walking through those. Our agenda really is as follows. I'm going to talk a little bit about the objective and why we built the solution, and take a look also at what the process is that we've created. I'm then going to talk a little bit about how we did it, how we built the solution, then move on to Andrew's demo, and as we've already said, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end. Okay, so what we wanted to do is we wanted to take a process that's very important, but one that's also quite complicated, and it's one that varies both from organization to organization, but also even within an organization, it typically evolves over time. And we wanted to show how no-code tools can be used to build a solution to manage that process. And the context of our slides and the solution that we've built and that we're demoing today is that of customer onboarding within financial services. However, as we do go through the webinar, it's important to be mindful of the bigger picture here. The approach that we're taking is equally applicable to both other industries and to other kinds of processes. Given that broader context, let's take a quick look at our problem for today, which is that of customer onboarding within financial services. We know that this process in particular can be complex and time-consuming. Organizations have regulatory obligations to do things properly, for example, to prevent money laundering. But also, they often need to do things quickly, as there may be an urgent business need to get customers on board and engaged. So without a proper system to manage that process, it's very easy to end up with manual processes, mistakes being made, and a high administrative and business cost. So I want to talk a little bit more about how we did it and how we built the solution. What we've done is we've taken a no-code approach to delivering the solution, and we've delivered it through configuration of out-of-the-box tools. In particular, the tools that we've used are SharePoint 2013 on-premise, although note that you could use a similar approach with SharePoint Online in Office 365. And we've also added in Nintex Forms, Nintex Workflow, and we've also made use of Nintex Live, which is something that we use to connect through to Dynamics CRM. And I really do want to emphasize that this was all done with no code at all. So the solution that Andrew is going to demonstrate in a minute, there's not a single line of code involved. Okay, so that's the approach we took. What I want to do next is talk briefly about the benefits of taking this kind of approach, as opposed perhaps, say, to custom coding something or buying an off-the-shelf finished solution. So the no-code approach really has these benefits. You can fit it to your unique processes. As Andrew will show at the start of the demo, we've got a Visio diagram that shows the process flow in this particular scenario. The nice thing about our solution is it's very adaptable to different processes. Equally, if your changes occur over time to your process, you can accommodate those changes easily within the solution without having to resort to complex rewrites or getting in third parties to help you redevelop the solution. Tools we've got integrate very well with other systems, and again, Andrew will demonstrate this with an example integrating with Dynamics CRM. Also, because we've taken a no-code approach, we don't actually need development resources to manage and maintain our solution. So that frees up our developers, or lessens the need for us to get developers in to build a solution. It means that technical business analyst type people are able to manage and maintain the solution for themselves. These things in turn help to contribute towards reduced costs. Certainly the solution that we're demoing today would have cost a lot more money if it had been built using custom code. And the last thing to consider here is that the solution is built on a very standard platform of SharePoint plus Nintex. It's very possible to reuse that platform and those capabilities to develop other solutions that you may need within your organization. So overall, the other thing I'd just like to say is that the no-code approach is really gaining widespread acceptance. Analysts such as Forrester and Gartner and AIIM have been recognized, and AIM, the organization, have been recommending it for some time. For example, Forrester has a recent white paper titled New Development Platforms Emerge for Customer-Facing Applications that I'll gladly send to you if that's of interest. Please do drop me an email and I'll be very happy to send that through to you. So we're going to jump straight into our demo now, and I'll be handing over to Andrew in a second. Just to explain the scenario that we're looking at here in a little more detail before I do that, we've got a fictional financial services company that needs to subject its new customers to an onboarding process. And that process varies depending on the type of customer that's being on board and the perceived risk of that customer. And we're going to look at two scenarios in the demo. The first is when we've got a potential client who's a low-risk client, and the second one is when we've got a high-sensitivity, politically exposed client. And as Andrew will see, we'll show you the process is started by entering client's details into a form. We've then got underlying rules that determine what additional information we need to gather based on the inputs earlier on in the form, and then we generate tasks for different business units within the organization to complete tasks. And finally, if we successfully onboard that customer, we are actually going to set them up in our CRM system, which Andrew again will show. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Andrew now, who will walk us through the demo.
Okay, so today I'm going to show you a business process for a fictional customer, a fictional financial services company, and we're demonstrating here a fairly complex process, and we'll walk through two scenarios. So the first scenario, as we've mentioned, will be a fairly low risk scenario, and in this example we'll choose a company and we'll determine that this company is in a low risk category, and so there will be relatively few actions to follow. The second scenario that we'll have a look at will be taking a look at a single individual's application, and this individual is marked up to be in a higher risk due to their politically exposed nature. So there will be more actions and decision points for that scenario. So making up the process, you can see on the diagram here, we have a number of different actors. So we have sales representatives, we have support team, we have a compliance team, and we also have senior management involvement, and at various points in the process we may also require services of the legal department as well. So a complex process, many different decision trees. So without further ado, let's run through the demonstration. So I'm going to start the process off from a sales representative's point of view. A new customer, a new potential customer has presented themselves, and I'd like to start the onboarding process. So I simply go into a screen as you see here, and this is built on SharePoint, and I have a new customer register which is used to store all potential applicants. So I simply hit the new item button there so I can bring up a new instance of a customer, and hitting the new item button will cause a form to load. This form has been built using Nintex Forms, which is a product that sits on SharePoint and enables us to surface our SharePoint data and also utilize that data within workflows as well. So here I'm going to add in my company details, and let's kick the process off. referring back to the business flow diagram, I'm going to select a company, and this company is deemed to be in a low risk category. So what you saw happening there was when I was selecting various different options, subsequent questions are presented as appropriate. So this means that we've had to model the behavior and rules that you saw in the flow diagram. We've had to model that in the form itself, and I'll show you that in a short while so you can see how we can set up a form that is adaptive and is smart in nature, that enables us to handle a number of different questions and answer scenarios. So now there are no more questions to be answered, so I can save the record. Saving the record will save an instance of the record, and it will also trigger a workflow in the background. Now the workflow is our customer onboarding workflow, and this will route our record to departments or individuals as appropriate. So for a low-risk customer such as Point Beyond Financial Services, the next point in the chain is for the support team to pick up the case and do a bit of research. So I'm going to cross over now into the shoes of our support team representative, and this is Malcolm Straw, who works for our support team. When we have a look at his workbench, you can see that there is a task there to be actioned. So in order to pick up the task, I simply edit the item, and now Malcolm can review the item. He's been asked to perform simplified customer due diligence checks. We'll make it simple in this example. No issues were encountered, so we'll just say proceed with onboarding. Now we could choose to mark it up for issues, in which case a different decision tree would be activated in the workflow. But for now, let's push this forward, proceed with onboarding, mark the task as complete. And so behind the scenes, the workflow is picking up the item and it's moving on to the next individual in the chain. This individual is the legal representative. So for the onboarding process to continue, we need to step into the shoes of the legal representative, and that's Mr. Gulliver. So here we are looking at Eddie Gulliver's workspace, and we can see a task is marked up here for legal document preparation. I'm going to go in here, edit the item, and at this stage I can pass comments as the legal representative. And I could also attach files if I wanted to. So I could browse to my desktop, and pick up an appropriate document. The task is complete, and the workflow is underway again. It's now at the last stage of the process, which is the account creation stage. So now it's over to the back office personnel to complete the account setup. Now it just so happens that I'm also fulfilling the role of the back office personnel, so we'll switch over to my session, refresh the screen, and there we are. You can see there's a task for me now to set up the account. Now if I edit the item to complete this task, I'm asked to fill in a number of details. I'll just fill in a couple of details to illustrate and complete the task. Now we've come to the end of the first scenario, and there's nothing more for the support staff to do here. All the checks have been completed. We have a verifiable audit trail as well. So clicking on the item, not only do we see some details about the customer, but we can also see the audit history here as well. So as the item passes through the workflow, these key events are being marked up on the record itself. So we have a living history of the item's progress. Also, another option for us as well is to utilize the Nintex Workflow history functionality. Looking at the workflow history will show us a graphical overview of the workflow's progress. So here we can see the workflow has run through to this stage here, the final stage, where we're at the stage of creating the customer account. And we're in the process of generating a back office record here. This functionality is provided through a tool by Nintex called a data connector. And this is an action that we can add into our workflow, very simple to configure. And this enables us in this instance to talk to Dynamics CRM and create various different records, account records or contact records. We could also use a connector to connect to other third-party tools such as Salesforce. It does take a couple of minutes for the account to be generated on the CRM system, so we'll return to the CRM system in a moment. What we'll do in the meantime is we'll trigger off the second instance. So I'm simply going to return back to my workspace. I'm going to start a new application. And this time, as we saw earlier, I'm going to select an individual, not a company. The individual is from the EU, but the individual is declared as a politically exposed person. So we've gone all the way down our decision tree there. There are no further questions to ask, so let's save the record. Now, because we had marked this individual up as a politically exposed person, we need to introduce another person into the process here, and that is a senior manager. So the senior manager is required to approve or decline this process right from the outset, according to our business rules. So I'm going to step into the shoes of our senior management representative here. And so here I am in the shoes of Patrick Button, who's our senior manager. In his workspace there is a task to approve this application. I'm going to make it simple at this point. We'll approve the task. Mark this up as OK. I did mention that this is a more complex routing. With this routing we have senior management approval. The next stage is to have our support team run some further background checks on this individual. So back again into the shoes of Malcolm Straw, who's our support representative. and there's a task on his workbench to describe the source of wealth and funds. Now, I'm running through the steps here just to show that not all processes follow a happy path where it's green light, green light, green light all the way through. So we're going to mark up an exception here. Unfortunately, we cannot find any information on Gustav Smith. So let's update accordingly. So we've marked up that there is an issue. So with our business rules, anytime an issue is encountered, we need our compliance team to step in. So our workflow can handle that. Basically, from any point in the workflow, if an issue is raised, the workflow is diverted to the issue resolution stage. And the issue resolution stage is managed by the compliance team, and so we'll step into the shoes of our compliance operative, Mr. David Harris. So, looking at David's workbench, we have a task to pick up here, have a compliance review for Gustav Smith. Let's edit this, and we'll get the process underway again. Compliance team stepped in, they've been able to trace and in a real life situation you probably want to attach some files at this point as well, so the workflow can accommodate that. We'll mark the task as complete, and we're back on the happy path again. So with the issues resolved by the compliance team, the case goes forward, the application goes forward. It's now over to the legal representative, Eddie Gulliver. Will give a chance for his workbench to refresh. There we are. We now have the task for the legal department to pick up. Legal document preparation. Completed by the legal department. So as before with the company application, the last step of the process is for the back office support. Refresh our workbench. Okay, task is here for back office support. I can now enter in some basic details. And that brings the second scenario to an end. So what we've done there is we've walked through two applications, and we have had to give sufficient time for the CRM record to be created. Let's have a look now and see what's created in the background. If I take a look at my CRM system, I'm looking at a list of accounts. I refresh my list. And there at the bottom of the list is our onboarded client. So we'll come back to that list in a minute or two to see how our individual has progressed. In the meantime, what I would like to show to you is how we were able to configure this application and how flexible the application is to accommodate perhaps your own purposes, or to be scaled out or scaled up in the future as you refine your processes going forwards. So the first thing I'm going to show you is our form. So as I mentioned before, we're using a product called Nintex Forms. This works seamlessly with SharePoint. And this provides us a very simple graphical interface, which we can see loading onto the screen here. And this interface enables us to drag controls into our palette in the center of the screen. Very easy to introduce new controls onto the form as appropriate. We can pick controls up, move them around. Also, what I'd like to draw your attention to here is the ability to set rules for the form. And this was absolutely key in this regard. We set up a number of rules, which are basically just logical expressions that we can set here, which indicate when a control should be made visible or not. So we have some smart logic embedded into the forms that will enable us to replicate a decision tree and hide or collapse controls as appropriate. And the other aspect of this solution is the workflow engine itself, the workflow that's running behind the scenes. So this is another product by Nintex, Nintex Workflow. And I'm going to take you into our workflow. So very simple to access the workflow and the forms from the item itself, providing you have sufficient administrator privileges. Okay, so what I'd like to show you here is I'd like to demonstrate the workflow product itself. The workflow for the onboarding process has been built using Nintex Workflow, and just like the form interface that I've shown you here, we have the ability to build up our workflow through a simple to use and intuitive interface whereby we're able to select our actions from a list of predefined categories, drag them into our workflow, and configure as appropriate. So there's a tremendous amount of customization that's available here without having to resort to code or to pass on the solution to a developer for some very heavy and bespoke customizations. There's a large amount of customization that's available out of the box with the Nintex Workflow product. So that's a quick overview of the workflow engine. Let's go back now to our CRM system and see how we got on. I'll refresh the page. And there you can see Gustav Smith, our politically exposed individual. He's gone through the onboarding process, and so we've successfully created an account. There we have it. One thing I should also mention is that as we are progressing through the workflow, it is also possible to see certain critical events that have been applied to the record. If we click on the record at any point in the process, we can see the record's details, but we can also see an audit trail of key actions that have been applied to that record. And this is all configurable. We've marked up some key events here, but the wording of those events and the specific events themselves to be added to the audit history is very much a configurable process. So that's about it for me then. I hope you found this demonstration useful. And so without further ado, I'll pass over to Ian. Thank you.
So I'm just going to wrap up quickly now before we move on to questions. So in summary then, I hope what we've shown is that our powerful no-code, know your customer solution for financial services that we've built using Nintex and SharePoint. I think we've demonstrated how a no-code approach can effectively be used to deliver solutions that are flexible to change, that improve efficiency and management of processes, that can include audit trails and reporting capability, and which we can easily integrate with other systems. In closing then, I would just like to say, if you like what you've seen and would like to find out more, or if you'd like a free trial of the Nintex product, or indeed to find out more about our solution, then do get in touch with me. My contact details are on the screen, and I'll be very happy to help. Just remains for me to thank Andrew for presenting and to everyone for attending. We'll now move on to questions. So Andrew, are you ready to take some questions with me?
Absolutely.
Great stuff. The first question is, would this work on mobile devices? Would you like to field that one, or shall I?
Yes, the answer is yes, but yes, carry on, you.
Yes is the answer. There's numerous, I guess, there's numerous levels of sophistication that you could take down that route through, from kind of simply allowing people to use the browsers on their mobile devices to access these forms, which would work fine. Or if you wanted to do something more sophisticated, there is actually a Nintex mobile app that we could install for users, or allowing users to install from the App Store, which would give them a richer experience when filling out forms on their mobile devices. Do you have anything else to add on that one, Andrew?
Yes, it all depends on, to the extent in which you want to use mobile devices will depend on your process. There are also other options as well for making the process light from an end user's point of view. For example, we touched very briefly upon sending tasks by emails. An email could be received on a mobile device, and we have a functionality called lazy approval, which basically means that it would be possible for someone to respond to an email from their mobile device and confirm a task as complete. So that doesn't require having to log on to the system. That basically just requires responding to your email message. So there are many different potential uses of the mobile devices, and it really depends on individual circumstances and individual business processes.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Next question, is the Know Your Customer application available on a step-by-step basis for learning Nintex coding? I can certainly answer that question. It's a piece of IP that we've developed at Point Beyond, so whilst we would be happy to sell it to you and talk you through it, it's something that would come with a cost tag. And if you'd like to discuss that, then I'd be more than happy to pick that up with you afterwards. Please do ping me an email. The last question is, can you integrate with other CRM systems beyond Salesforce and Dynamics CRM?
Yes, and the answer to that is yes, although Nintex will provide some preset tools which make things easier for us, so we can connect to Salesforce, CRM. Additional systems would have to be viewed on a case-by-case basis. The basic premise for attaching to a back-end system may well be utilizing web services, which we can build up using the workflow tool and using web services to connect to other back-end environments, but there are so many other variables that come into the mix there based on how your network is set up and the security that you have across your network, and so there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to that question.
I guess the answer is yes, we can normally do it, but sometimes it involves some custom code to develop the connectors.
Yep. Okay, very good.
Okay, another question. This app is very powerful, and as a newbie, this app is a very powerful sampler solution that can help get Nintex accepted as a quick business solution. Yeah, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. Yes, it is. Note that in the USA there is no such requirement, since the Financial Services Authority, or FSA, is only for the UK. I'm a compliance officer in the USA. So that's very interesting, because I guess in the US obviously there will be a different compliance regime, a different set of requirements to adhere to. But I think the flexibility of our process here is such that you should be able to adopt it to meet the regulatory needs that you have. Okay, we have no more questions, so I think we'll call it a day there today. Again, finally, thanks to everyone for attending. I hope you found it useful, and thank you to Andrew for all his work on preparing the solution and delivering the demo today. So thank you all, and we hope to see you on the next one.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone.